吓死我了, that was scary, guys. I'm scared. Alrighty, YouTube. Today we have a big review coming out. This is the Zowie XL25 66K esports monitor. It's their top of the line flagship 360Hz Diac Plus monitor. If you've been watching any of the VCT Masters Tokyo's games or VCT Ascension or Pro CS, this is what they are using. And so I've been pretty fortunate that Zowie has actually sent me one of these for review. Looks like they're pretty set on changing my opinions from when I talked about it in the PG27AQN video. A good friend of mine, Frank, he was contacted by Zowie to look for top level competitive players who can also do reviews. And so, you know, I threw my name in there and well, I'm pretty surprised that they even picked me given how I've been pretty vocal on my opinions about Zowie products and most of them have been relatively negative. Also, today I've decided that because this is a monitor review, I no longer need to have a mouse and a mousepad on the screen. We can do it from the other angle from where it normally is on my desk. Now, I hate doing monitor reviews because it's very hard for me to just put this here and, you know, talk to you guys about it without really doing much and showing much. Other monitor reviews are lots of gameplay, B-rolls, but I don't have any of that available, unfortunately. Nonetheless, let's jump into it. Before we get started though, I do want to say, and it's important, you guys can probably see here, there's a disclaimer. This product was sent to me by BenQ Zowie in exchange for an honest review. All thoughts and opinions are my own. They didn't pay me or commission in any way. And that's just something that I must put out here because it's important for you guys to know, and it's important for their marketing, that this review is purely my own thoughts and opinions, how I structured it, how I wanted to do it, completely up to me. They had no say in it. All they did is send me the product and tell me, make an honest review. So to give you guys the quick summary, this is the best looking TN panel I've tried to date for visual aesthetics, which is pretty surprising. But as per usual, TN panel still sucks for general viewing. That's an inherent flaw of this technology, not much you can do about that. This is definitely perhaps the best performance focused monitor on the market, but now that ULMB2 exists on things like the Asus PG27AQN, this is a point we'll discuss more later in the video. So the recommendation in this case is to either use this as a competitive monitor while you have a second monitor that is of higher resolution or IPS, OLED and such, and you use that for everything else. Otherwise, you need to be a very specific, full sweat, try-hard competitive player who is willing to sacrifice all other enjoyment and use cases from their monitor just for a slight advantage in competitive game. So this might not even matter depending on if your eyes can notice the difference or not. So I'm not really a person that often cares about packaging and unboxing and all of that as much, but I do want to praise Zowie here, because the Zowie packaging has always been one of my favorites for monitors. The box is easy to open, the layout inside is clean, it's super easy to unpack and pack up again when you're done with it. Other brands often have this problem, especially the Asus monitors that I've had. Taking it out of the box is a hassle, putting it back into the box is an even bigger hassle. You know, whether that's trying to fit the monitor back inside the box or accessories falling out as you're trying to place it in because they're just placed weirdly. Well, as you can see with this video on the screen about the Zowie ones, it's just easy to deal with. You open up the box, you lift out everything, the accessories are all there, the monitor is packed in the middle, you can pack and unpack everything super easily, and I wish every other company could just pack their monitors the same way like Zowie does. This was the same on their previous XL25 46K, which is a 240Hz version of this monitor, and I owned one of those before I moved to Australia a year ago. The monitor itself is pretty lightweight and slim fit. If we all have a look at it from the side here, you can tell that it's not actually very thick, it doesn't go in as much, and so that's all good. The VESA mount, the monitor arm mount at the back, works like a charm, it's easy to put on. I haven't tried the actual stock mount for this monitor, but I think it's the same as the XL25 46K, which I have used in the past. Definitely one of the most convenient monitor stands to work with in terms of being table space efficient. You know, it's small, saves you space, doesn't get in the way of keyboards and mouse pads as some of the tripod stands do. We are going to skip the rest of the accessories and other things because there's a million videos you can go watch in regards to that. I don't particularly think it's important. If you are wondering, the flaps that are usually on the two sides of the monitor, those are included in the box. They're optional, you can put them on or take them off. If you see some marketing images, you might see the flaps and wonder why it's not on this one. The purpose of that is to reduce glare from other lighting. So if you use this and you had sunlight coming into the room and reflecting onto your screen and making it look really dark and you can't see properly, that's why those things are here, to help you reduce that glare. So the options menu is easily accessible via the little control joystick on the back of the monitor on the right side. I probably should have thought about this before I made the angle from this side so I can show you guys, but nonetheless, you can just listen to me press it. Brings up the menu, very easy to access, very easy to operate. You can set all your options and everything in there. If anyone wants my settings, I'll put it in the description. Now, if it's not there and you check for it, just remind me to put it there. I might have forgotten by the time I upload the video. So the most important thing about this monitor that we gotta talk about, that I'm here to talk about, that we're focused on, is performance. And so the two most important things and main selling points of this monitor is that first it's 360 Hz and second it has DIAC Plus. So the first thing we'll talk about then is 360 Hz noticeable and is it worth it? Well, I already talked about this multiple times, whether that's in mice reviews or even the Asus PG27AQN video. So to me, 360 Hz is very noticeable, but maybe not for everyone. I've definitely seen people say that they can't tell a difference even between going from 165 to 240 Hz. So needless to say, 360 Hz is probably even less noticeable for them. Make sure that you're capable of even getting 360 Hz before you consider a 360 Hz monitor. If your PC isn't even running the games you want to play at 360 frames, what's the point, right? Doesn't make a difference in gameplay. Well, this is a very subjective answer. Once again, to me, yes. To others, maybe not. And I can't give you a definitive answer because that's something that you have to try for yourself to know that if you can tell the difference. But if you want my opinions, then obviously yes, 360 Hz is a noticeable difference and improvement. It comes down to a combination of the skill level of the individual in question, the type of game you're playing, if your eyes are even capable of seeing that. And that's why they were looking for top tier, esports level players to send this out to review, because we're more at a situation where our individual skill level is obviously not going to be holding us back and drawing conclusions that if a monitor is actually going to be beneficial to us. Because if I can't aim on 240 Hz, I'm not going to aim any better on 360 Hz. I'm being gatekept by my own skill level. It's the same as me talking about 4K Hz polling rate mice, where they become much more noticeable when you go onto a 360 Hz monitor compared to lower refresh rates. But it's still up to your user skill level to try and take advantage of that. The end conclusion is yes, 360 Hz is definitely noticeable, it can be impactful, and a thing to note is you'll notice a much bigger difference going down from 360 to 240 rather than the initial jump going from 240 to 360. I tried going back to 240 and then all of a sudden it just felt so much choppy and it wasn't as enjoyable. But when I first switched to 360 from 240, I was like, yeah, this is nice, this is smooth, but I don't really tell as big of a difference as I did going from lower to higher previously in the past. So the next important thing to talk about is DIAC Plus. On the XL2546K, they also had DIAC Plus. However, on the 360 Hz version, the DIAC Plus backlight strobing, motion blur reduction, whatever you want to call it, is significantly more impactful on this 360 Hz monitor than it was on the previous 240 Hz version. And that's something that I have to first apologize for, because I was telling people that it's a bit more of a gimmick, it doesn't really matter as much. Well, on the 360 Hz, it's definitely doing a lot more than it did on the 240. So the first thing we need to understand is what is motion blur and why it happens. So Zowie did a really good GIF file here that gives you a basic explanation. But essentially, the nature of monitor technology is that it's a still frame held for a split second before moved to the next frame. So what you're seeing is a flat image, followed by the next image, followed by the next image, just really fast so it looks continuous. However, there's always a slight latency in which the previous frame is still having after images from residual light, even though the next one is trying to be applied on top of it, and therefore it's overlapping. And that overlap is what's causing this motion blur, the perceived blur. And you can tell from all these images that I'm chucking up on the screen right now that this is roughly what it'll look like. And the Zowie GIF showcases that as well. Now that is an inherent issue with all these LCD screens, and my guess is that the duration of the after image itself does not change regardless of the refresh rate. In the sense that if you use the 60 Hz monitor and you use a 360 Hz monitor, when the frame is supposed to be cut off, the residual part is the same on both. It's just that one is supposed to change frame earlier than the other. Because technically speaking, the panel is no longer powered and supposed to be lit up showing the previous frame anymore, but the decay out is natural. And therefore, in the case of a 60 Hz monitor, due to the refresh rate being low to begin with, chances are the residual lighting has already decayed and faded by the time the next frame is supposed to be displayed, because there's a bigger gap between frames. And therefore there's much less motion blur to talk about because there's more time for it to decay out. Now obviously 60 Hz in itself just looks very blocky and choppy for us in modern times, and therefore we don't use it. In the case of a 360 Hz monitor, however, the after image is still decaying at the same speed as it would say on a 60 Hz. But the next frame is coming significantly faster in, right? It's trying to be displayed faster than when you were on a lower refresh rate. So you get more motion blur as the refresh rate goes up. Yes, it'll look smoother, but it doesn't change the fact that there is more motion blur as well. And therefore, the more motion blur you have, the more the backlight strobing, which is what we call this type of technology, DIAC, is more impactful to reduce that blur. Needless to say, the higher the refresh rate, the smoother and more responsive the game feels as well. So having backlight strobing on top of the higher refresh rate is really, really nice. In this case, the Zowie DIAC Plus is showcasing its capabilities even more so than it did on the XL2546K. Now, does that make a difference in gameplay, however? Well, as much as I want to say no, I can't. And I have to admit that yes, it is definitely impactful towards gameplay. Is it significant, however? That's something that's a skill issue. That's purely dependent on the player in question. Some people have even responded that they don't really tell a difference between backlight strobing tech, or it makes them feel sick or something like that. So everyone's different, and therefore I cannot tell you if it does or if it doesn't. There have definitely been moments where I have hit shots due to having that clearer image, but it isn't something that will instantly make you become a god tier player. I think it was very situational, and it's at the point where you're really trying to just min-max everything for performance gains. But credit where credit is due, Zowie does intend this monitor as a pure competitive esports FPS monitor, and it definitely does that. The smallest advantage is still an advantage gained nonetheless. It really is only relevant when it comes to competitive FPS titles because there's constant motion, and being able to clearly identify targets and target heads and such is more impactful towards gameplay. Whereas if you play casual games, you know, I jumped on Monster Hunter or I jumped on League of Legends or something, then you don't feel as much difference. More onto the non-competitive side of things. This is still a TN panel. Now what does that mean? Colors suck, viewing angle sucks, and all-round enjoyment is pretty bad. Yes, I did say that this is the best looking TN panel I have used, but that doesn't change the fact that TN panels suck and all of those viewing experiences are terrible. In fact, now actually, I've been thinking, could the viewing angle issue be a reason why you see pro players move this monitor forward close to their face, have really bad posture without even realizing that that could be a problem? Because what I usually do is I have my monitor as low down as possible and I would tilt it upwards. Right, so I can't tell if you guys can tell that on the screen, but I have this monitor on a tilt upwards. And when I put this monitor on the same angle as I would on my IPS one, it actually results in the top 30% of my screen having that color distortion and viewing angle difference. Normally, we look at the center of the screen where the crosshair is, and that's where I would be looking at playing Valorant. And roughly this section of the screen, for the entirety of the screen, at the angle that I look at it at, starts to look very, very weird. The colors are starting to look off. And the only reason I will notice that is because playing Valorant, you look up, you look at the timer, you look at who's alive on both sides, and you look at the top right for the kill feed and so on. Immediately upon switching to this monitor, when I went to play games, when I look at any of that information, it just looked off. Something wasn't right. I wasn't able to say, look at my minimap on the top left, instantly look back at the center of the screen and just process that information because something changed, right? Something wasn't the same. And therefore I've been thinking, could it be that they put the monitor really close to their face, they straighten it all up, have those weird postures just so that they reduce that viewing angle issue? Now obviously pro players bring that in just so they can focus on the screen more, like the center of their screen around the crosshair and such, but that could be something that none of us have even realized. Now beyond that, watching things on the screen has been really unenjoyable as well. I've been watching the VCT games. I like to recline and lie down in my chair when I'm watching something. Now with me lying down, with the monitor being tilted up, holy, I have the worst viewing angle possible, and I just cannot watch anything on the screen. Everything just looks wrong. So that forces me to either move the monitor again, or I have to sit up straight to look at it. Even when listening to music, you know, I lie down in my chair listening to music, I'll have my playlist all here, my library all here, and then I can no longer just lie down, use my wireless mouse, and scroll and change tracks. I have to sit up straight just so I can read the titles and stuff properly. Another thing, writing the script reminded me of, because this is a pure white screen and I've been staring at it for quite a while. And it's that back in my uni days, when I'm up at 3 AM writing things on Google Docs or other programs and looking at things on a solid white background, the TN panel is really just so jarring for my eyes. Like, it felt like getting flashbanged just looking at the monitor. And sometimes it feels like I can see the pixels as well. In summary, it's just really shit. So we'll have to talk about some basic comparisons then. For most other 360Hz monitors on the market, they are IPS panels. And so that just comes down to IPS versus TN debate. Now in that case, the other 360Hz monitors perform significantly better when it comes to viewing angles, coloring, and all of the IPS benefits that are just inherently a benefit of IPS. As far as all-round use case is concerned, most games, general use, writing documents, writing studies, work, content creation, casual games, this Zowie monitor definitely falls behind compared to those ones. However, in the specific intended use case of this Zowie monitor, which is raw esports performance, then this indeed is better than those 360Hz IPS, just for that slight competitive advantage gain that you can get with Diac Plus. So then the question we all have is, why is there no IPS panel that has this motion blur reduction? Well, IPS panels do have that. They've just been pretty bad. Until about a month ago, Nvidia released ULMB2 at the end of May. ULMB2 stands for Ultra Low Motion Blur 2. You might also see it on your monitors called ELMB or whatever your monitor brand wants to call it. There's only a few monitors compatible with the ULMB2 right now. In fact, I think there's only 2, and the other monitors that it's supposed to be compatible with have yet to be released. Now I won't go too much into detail because I don't have a ULMB2 compatible monitor here anymore, but Optimum Tech did do a video comparing it to the PG27AQN by Asus, which I also previously reviewed and said it was the god tier of monitors. From that video, the TLDR is that ULMB2 on these IPS panels perhaps even outperforms Diac Plus at their own game in motion blur reduction. Now if you haven't seen the PG27AQN review that I did, you should go watch that. But essentially it just means that the PG27AQN is the single best gaming monitor on the market in all aspects now. It's 360Hz, it's an IPS panel, it has 1440p high resolution, and it has better motion blur reduction than the Zowie. So there's no longer any debate on what is the best gaming monitor on the market. That is the solid, definitive answer. The downsides of that, however, is that firstly, in Australia, the PG27AQN costs $800 more than the XL2566K here. Secondly, that one is of higher resolution, so it can put a bit more of a toll on your PC since you do run higher resolution on that. But if those are not issues for you, just get that monitor and it'll end your monitor journey for quite some time. Right, if you have money and a good computer and you just want the best monitor and you don't want to buy another monitor for quite some time, buy that, you're done. Now some of you might be complaining, oh but that's 27-inch 1440p, but 25-inch is better for esports and so on. Well, let me tell you now that that's a myth. Just try one of those and you'll see. It's not something that I could describe here using words. You have to experience it for yourself. The reason why 27-inch 1440p wasn't used in the past is because they were slower, had lower refresh rates, and so on. But, like I keep saying, that's a thing of the past and no longer the case. If you go try that PG27AQN monitor, you'll see a different world. So then in this case, who should buy the XL2566K? Well, the XL2566K here essentially caters to an extremely niche audience and has very specific use cases for those of you that are interested. Firstly, you should be a pure performance-focused FPS person wanting that very last bit of competitive advantage that you can gain from your gear. You know, you've min-maxed everything, you're trying to buy the Wooting keyboard, you buy the best mouse for you, the best mousepad, the top PC, you need the top monitor, and therefore now you have no excuse for why you're shit at the game because you can no longer blame your gear. Anything else beyond that is just your own skill issue. Secondly, you cannot afford the PG27AQN because we can't just ignore the $800 price difference between these two top performing monitors. Thirdly, you're willing to sacrifice your enjoyment in all other aspects. You know, if you're not a person who's constantly studying, writing documents, writing essays, doing work, content creation, watching shows, watching anime and so on, you're just on here really playing games, playing FPS games, then maybe this will be the one for you. And another thing to note is that if you are a constant LAN attendee, you know, you're a Pro CS player, Pro Valorant player, you play those like major tournaments and this is the monitor they use there, you want to maintain consistency between your home setup and the LAN setups, then maybe it's worth getting one as well, just so you don't get thrown off when you move over. Also, another option is you buy this and you use it as your competitive esports monitor, but you also have a second monitor that's of IPS OLED, higher resolution and such, and you can use that for all other casual games or doing work and writing your studies and things like that. For example, buying the OLED 240 would be a great complement to this monitor. So what I do think is that if you had two monitors, you buy this and you buy one of the OLED 240s, that will be the ideal combination. If you buy only one monitor and one monitor to end it all, you buy the other Asus 360. Given the price of having to buy both the XL2566K and an OLED 240, that's going to be more than buying the 360Hz PG278UN. And so you might as well just buy that. And therefore, the double monitor combination is only for people who already have that IPS or OLED monitor, and you just add this to complement the other one. So at the end of all of this, essentially what I'm saying is that the XL2566K here does provide a competitive FPS advantage for those who are looking to gain every possible performance boost from gear. However, that is at the cost of quite a few other quality of life aspects. Whether that is something worth it or not is only up to you guys here watching for yourself to decide. If you want my answer, I'd say no. Even for myself and for majority of you out there as well. The vast majority of users, this is not going to be worth it. But there is no lie in Zowy's marketing that this is an esports focused monitor, and I do congratulate Zowy for creating perhaps the best performance focused monitor available. It definitely lives up to the reputation in this aspect. And so once again, I would like to thank Zowy for the review opportunity, and also shout out my boy Frank for hooking us up with this. I look forward to seeing what other products that Zowy can cook up in the future. I hope they're happy with this review, and don't blacklist me from future items because I didn't say that this was the best monitor in existence and everyone should buy one. I'm here to give you guys the honest review, what I think is the case, coming from my background as a competitive player, and well, the video speaks for itself. I look forward to seeing all of you in the next one.